All right. So thank you, Dilla. My screen is now up. That's fabulous. As I said, you're both welcome to unmute. There's only such a small group. We can, have chats. Feel free to interrupt me, ask questions as we go, and that's fine.
Right.
But all right, now we're in business. We can see the screen. All right.
Yes.
So basically, you asked me before, Shazan, what subject I teach, and it's not like a nice little, I teach math or English. I teach a whole bunch of them. But the main one I teach is this one here, a makerspace. And this is a subject in Australia, but it's also, they're often public. So you can go to what's known as a makerspace. And on the screen now, it sort of tells you some of the stuff that we actually have in that space. So this is on a school. So we've got things like laser cutters, 3D printers, heat presses, lots of hand tools, but then we've also got things like the Sphero little robots, rolling spider drones, all sorts of different materials are sort of in this space. And my role within the school is to get the students in using all these different things to help their learning. Okay, so sometimes we're using digital technologies like the iPad, but sometimes we're not. Sometimes we're actually building things out of cardboard. And a lot of these activities you'll be able to do hopefully with cardboard or materials that you have on hand, not necessarily the technology. So that's a good thing. Okay. So that subject runs from year 7 to 12. So I'll translate that to about 12 years old students to 18 years old students. And the unit we're going to look at is what's known as pixel play. So this is where we start getting a little bit interesting and I guess showing you an insight into some of the ways that we work together. Okay, so what you're looking at now is actually what's known as our portal. Okay, and this is where every single subject has to put all their work. So every single student can go in here and see what we're doing in this subject, whether they're doing the subject or not. Okay, so this is how it works. They go to the topic of the term, which is pixel play. Okay, and they can click on the links. Okay, and you can see it's broken down into weeks there. We don't have time to go through all that, but I'll have time to show you some of the, I guess, tools and activities that we do and then what we do after it. Okay, so give me one moment. Sorry. All right, so hopefully today, guys, as a bit of a team together, we'll have some time to explore. Okay, a little bit of 3D printing, a little bit of game making. Have some time for you to actually open these apps, sort of see what happens in them. And also, hopefully give you a chance to sort of ask some of those questions about how we do things. So that's what we're hoping to achieve through this workshop today, okay, which is fabulous. All right, and I thought, why not start with a question I get often from our parent community. So when we say, oh, look, we're going to do some gaming, they're like, hang on, how does this help my son or my daughter? And they're concerned that if we're playing games or doing things like that, it's not helping them grow. So it's a question we've got fairly good at answering of late. Okay?
Yeah.
So for us, why we choose gaming is it's all about what we sort of spoke about a little bit earlier in the workshop. It's that notion of we don't just consume off the internet. Okay, we didn't want our young people just using the internet to watch YouTube and make TikToks, because that's sort of what they were doing. So what we started to do is we went, what if we actually gave them the skills so that they can create their own games? Okay, so that's one of the reasons we do gaming. Another reason is we mapped it. I'm jumping around here, sorry. I said variable entry points. What I mean by that is we mapped it to the existing core curriculum. So the unit you're about to see actually reflects the exact work they're doing in the mathematics course at the time. So what I mean by that is we're looking at X, Y, variables, things like that, ratios, scale. We mapped it to where they do that in maths. And then we said, all right, we'll run this unit because it's actually building that knowledge together. And we also looked at English and when they were doing storytelling and the parts of a story. And we said, okay, that's another time we can also run this because there'll be a transfer of skills there. Okay. We also run this one for the main reason of, and it's in green there, engagement. The students really enjoy gaming and they really enjoy making their games as well. So that's partly why we went, let's do it this way. let's get their English, their maths really like humming along nicely and do it in an engaging way. So that's why we're sort of looking at gaming. Now, welcome to those who have just joined us. Apologies for the late start. We had a little bit of a tech issue, but we are rolling now. So let's actually start looking at what Pixel Play is. All right, so give me one moment. I'm just connecting my iPad at the same time, guys. Okay, so Pixel Play looks like this. So again, you're on our online portal. And this is, I'm showing you this because it's how we sort of set up units like this. Okay? So what we often do is we'd start with assessment. I know that sounds slightly strange starting with that, but our students need to know where they're going and what this is all leading towards. So we'd start with them on the page, like the one on the left here that says formative and summative tasks. The formative ones are not assessed, i.e. they're not given a grade, but the summative ones have a rubric and a grade that sits with them, and that's reported back to parents. We use those formative tasks, and they're tasks like make a game in minutes or planning tasks to help structure their success later on. Okay? And then what we actually assess is how their game develops. Okay? And then in this particular unit, we also got them to make an advertisement. Okay? Now, I'm going to go back to something. Okay, I skipped it in because I was trying to catch us up a bit, but I do want to go back to one point, and it's a little thing about context. If you're wondering why everything is hosted on our portal and why this is so important to us as a school, for one very good reason, we are in lockdown. So not all of Australia, just our state has been in lockdown. We've had more than this half of the year, so more than half a year of our students learning from home. Okay? And that's why we have all these resources which are written, available online and delivered in this manner. And it's been a really good challenge for us to sort of work out how we deliver something practical like Pixel Play, but without that face-to-face content. Okay, so it's been really interesting, and that's partly why you're seeing so many different sort of screenshots of how we've done this one. Okay, so that said, the first thing, like all professionals do, they explore and they research, and to do that, we get our students to actually play some games. So instantly we have our students engaged. Okay? They don't just get to play. As you can see on the screen there, there's a little table they fill in as well. Now, if you're in the chat function, I've made this presentation available to you so you can have a closer look at these, you can take them, you can adapt them. But whenever we do a sort of fun, engaging task like this, we do make sure there's also a task that sits with it. So they're not just playing games and going, yeah, I'm learning, it's great. We actually do then hold them to account. Okay. And then what we get them to do is we get them to jump into something which is getting them to understand this whole idea of what a pixel is. Now, we could give them a big reading to do on this is what pixels are, or we could immerse them in that. Okay. So the task you're looking at on screen now, it says task 2, create, get, making. Okay. And you'll see there's 3 boxes. Again, just giving you some context. Our school provides 4 entry levels for all students on the same task. Okay, and what that means is because we don't stream our students, in one class, you may have the very top sitting right next to a very bottom academic student and then everyone in between. So how we manage that is actually shown on that image there. The students who are just beginning their understanding, they would start on what's known as a consolidation task. The students who are probably working a year to 2 years above where they are, they might start with the consolidating, go into the refining and make it to the extending in the same time frame. Okay. But for this one, most of the students started with the refining task, and there's a link there to an app where students can make their own pixel selfies. Okay. So he took something they loved also doing, which was taking selfies, and they had to build them but as a pixelated selfie as shown in the picture there. Okay. You'll notice we give really short instructions, and that's a hallmark of what we do with our younger learners, because part of the joy of what we do is let them press buttons, let them make mistakes and learn from that. Okay. And that's sort of one of the tips we have is sometimes when working with tools like the Pixel Selfie app, less instructions more. Okay. We also do something called just-in-time learning. which is we won't show them how to export it or save it until they need to do that. Otherwise, what we were finding is we give really long instructions via Zoom or Google Meet, as our school uses. And by the time you'd finished talking, they'd all been, what? They'd all lost it. So we definitely use the just-in-time model. Okay. We do have resources available on YouTube, and I'll show you one of the really short ones that we use shortly when we get into some actual doing. But the big thing we learned, and this is our 5th year now of running Makerspace, the big thing we learned is for any of these tasks, be it the pixel selfie or, you know, even just a student writing a response to a question, we needed to work out what's known as a workflow. So how, if they do that, are we going to get that back? Because there's one of me, there's up to 28 of them, and they're all over Melbourne, and they're not actually physically in front of me, okay, because of lockdown. So how are we going to get this work coming in? So for us, we used Google Suite to do that. So we are a Google school, meaning basically we use Google Classrooms, and they just post their lesson, all their work there. My husband is a primary teacher as well, and his school went with a program called Seesaw, which is the same theory, but the students just need to have somewhere they can actually put their work, and so that you can see it as well. Okay. So here we go. I think it's probably about time. Okay. I'm just going to pause my screen sharing. I'm going to jump into the chat function. I think it's about time we jump in to Hopscotch and some actual apps now. So give me one moment if you can. I'm just going into Zoom. Fabulous. All right. Okay, jumping back in. There we go. All right. So I'll give you a moment. We're talking about Hopscotch. Now, I hope I have the correct app for Malaysian audiences. There we go. I'm just popping that in the chat function for you now. The other thing I'm going to pop in there is just an example that I'll refer to in a moment of how we actually use YouTube to help us communicate really basic, simple ideas. Okay. So I've popped those in there for you. I'm going to jump back into sharing my screen. Okay. But I'm actually going to share my iPad screen with you. No, maybe I can't. Depends on how we're set up to go. Give me one moment, guys. Sorry about this.
All right, it's okay.
Okay, let's get the iPad up. All right.
All right.
So we've got my iPad screen. Fabulous. Okay. So guys, I'm hoping you can see my iPad screen now. All right.
Yes.
So let's jump in. Our students have just done a little bit of work on playing some games, doing some research. They've made a pixel selfie. They've done a little bit of looking at Pinterest, as you might have seen on the previous slide. Now, the first thing we do is we don't start building our own games. We don't do any brainstorming or planning, because ultimately we need them to know what the app is first. So that's where Hopscotch comes in. So Hopscotch is an app. Now, sadly, it used to be free. Unfortunately, in the last about 6 weeks or so, it's still free to download, but they've added this feature called Seeds, which is basically things that you can't access unless you have Seeds, and Seeds is basically payment. You can do tutorials and you can earn Seeds, and lots of our students do that so they can actually unlock things. But there's enough in the basic version that we still decided to run with it. So what I mean is, I've just opened Hopscotch. Now I know there's a slight lag, so I'll be mindful of that when I'm modeling this with you. But basically, once you jump in, we get all our students to set up their accounts. Heads up, it takes forever. I don't know why students take a while, but they do take a while. If you don't have a one-to-one device situation, so say you might have one iPad in a classroom or a few, what I would recommend is having a single login that's yours, you log them all in, and then they just use that single account. Okay? Because under the Me section, they can all save different projects. Okay? So once you get in and have an account, if you head to templates, this is where we start our learners. And we don't start them with us modeling this forever. All we do is we show them, scroll down, scroll down. These are all the different things you can do. We start them in the thing called App Store favorites. Now, obviously what I was talking about before with the seeds, see how it says Pokemon Go 50 and there's a little seed sign next to it? That's meaning that aspect is now paid. It's really annoying, these all used to be free. But there's some really good ones, Crossy Road or Geometry Dash, which are free.
Hey everyone, in this tutorial, we use Hopscotch.
So that's not me speaking. That is what Hopscotch does. Okay? It's self-directed, and this is where it's really powerful for us as a teacher. We might have some students that we're working with to perhaps still get them through the first task or on something else that needs a little bit of focus. And we can put students in this, and this then is their teacher for that session. Okay? So how it works is the video plays.
To build our very own version of the popular App Store game, Crossy Road. Crossy Road, a chicken is trying to cross a busy road without getting hit. Way up every time I tap the screen. Awesome.
Sorry, I just skipped a little bit there. What basically it does is it shows the students step by step what to do, and it's all contained within this plus sign. Okay, so it trains them how to put in characters, trains them how to click on them and add code. And what they do is as they press, beg your pardon, that's playing my game. Back.
Want to replay and just tap the circular arrow at the top right corner.
So the tutorial speaks them through what they need to do. Okay. So what does this mean for you lovely people? Well, give me a moment. I have a task for you. All right, the joy of having many, many devices. Okay. And not coming up, that's okay. I'll just bring it back to my laptop for the task. All right, so what I'd love to do is I'd like to give you some time now. Okay, so in the chat, I put a little video, and that's all we show our students often. And the little video, if you haven't watched it, is basically just how to get to the part we need. But what we would give our students is something like this. Okay, so we would give them a task. Okay, so we get them to jump in, create an account, and they're going to use those inbuilt tutorials. Okay, now on the right-hand side, before I get to you can come back, is some success criteria. Again, we try not to lock it down and say you must do this, 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 and this, and this, because we want them to explore, to push different buttons. If they want to make Crossy Road with, instead of a chicken, a dancing pumpkin because it's in the program, they can. In fact, that's one of the goals for today. So taking risks, getting things wrong, and finding ways to make things work are what we're looking for in our learners, which, as it happens, are you guys today. So what's going to actually happen now is I'm going to stay right where I am, okay? But I want you guys to jump into Hopscotch, okay? If you'd like to turn off your screen because you're more comfortable or you're on the same device that you're about to use, you totally are welcome to. But I will see you if you choose that option back here at 10:50. Had to check the time then because I'm in a completely different time zone. But what you can do, jump in, push every single button you possibly can. That's how we learn Hopscotch, and that's exactly how we do it with our learners. So I will stay here, but I will also see you back here at 10:50. If you have a question in the meantime, jump into that chat and I'll be checking that.
Yeah, actually there is one question.
Sure.
Faris asked either the apps can be used not only in iPad Pro, or it can be used on any iPads?
You can run it on an iPad mini. In fact, if you like, that's part of the reason we chose Hopscotch, is when we first started using this, it would run on the mini, and it's been updated for the most recent iOS as well.
Right.
The sad thing is, and I did look into this, it only comes in English versions at the moment. We still do have some students who are working on minis, and they can absolutely run this as well. Okay. Interestingly, you can run it on your mobile phone. If you've got an Apple smartphone, again, in Australia, mobile phones are actually banned in schools. Like, we're not allowed to have them as part of the classroom program anymore. We used to be able to have them, but now we can't, which is a shame, because lots of students would often use their phones as like that sort of, oh, I can do this activity on my phone, and it meant they had a device. But yeah, it does work on the iPad and iPhone.
Same here in Malaysia, students are banned to bring handphone to schools too.
Yeah. Look, I won't lie, our students do bring them. They're just not allowed to have them like in class. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
Hopefully you guys are getting in there, having an explore.
Sorry, Shelly, can I ask you one question?
Of course, go for it.
All right. What is the difference between the Swift Playground and the Hopscotch? Because I see here there is the same objective, right? The coding, the coding program. So actually, what is the difference?
You're absolutely correct. That's partly why we use Hopscotch. We use Swift Playgrounds as well, but we use it a little bit later in the term when our students are a little bit more familiar and a little bit more capable of using the Swift language. So there's huge similarities between them, and it's a fabulous pickup that you've made. We also use Hopscotch because of the gaming aspect to it. When Swift first came out, for those of you who've used it, I'm sure probably know, it didn't have as much of the gaming. It had the single sort of, you could do your coding basics game style, but it didn't really have that capacity to build. And I guess that ties into what we were saying at the very start of this session. One of our school's big focuses is creation and creating. So using these sort of tools to, I guess, build our own rather than just sort of play through. The other thing we do use Hopscotch for, and then we move into Swift, we also use an app called Tickle. It's free, but the reason we use that is Tickle speaks to both Hopscotch and in Swift Playground language. But what it allows you to do is it allows you to code drones, robots, that kind of stuff. So I guess the bigger picture around why we use Hopscotch is it because it connects really nicely to all the languages that we're teaching from year 7 through to that year 9.
I see.
Yeah.
Right.
And the other thing is, part of the reason we used Hopscotch is we had far more buy-in from some of the other faculties. So when maths was like, what, we have to do coding and gaming, and they were quite scared, or actually science was even a little bit more reluctant. They could see the math and the science far more easily, I think, in Hopscotch. So it actually supported our teachers as well to make that choice.
Okay. Right, 3 minutes to 10:50. Everyone, if you have any questions, you may jump in the chat box.
Hopefully everyone's in there pushing every button they can.
Yeah.
I understand. It's not long. I wish we had so much longer today.
Add code. To the left.
Don't forget, guys, you can pop your questions in that chat.
Oh, yeah, one more thing, Shelly. Actually,
Yeah.
in Malaysia, coding is not. Coding is not a part in the curriculum, especially in primary, as well as I am a robotic teacher. So like I'm setting up the robotic club basically because of how to say that my own how to say that with my own money, my own
Oh, wow. Yeah.
yeah, it's not in the curriculum, and it's not
Which means there's no
um
funding for it.
yeah
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a tough one.
yeah, I'm doing that because of when we have competition, we don't have to compete between the district level or the state level. We just go straight to national level.
Oh, wow. And what do
Yeah.
you compete in?
We code the robot using the this one Lego.
Oh, the Lego Evo,
Yeah,
EVOs.
yes, the
Yeah,
Mindstorm Lego.
fabulous.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So so like coding is actually not everyone is how to say
Studying it.
not really,
Familiar,
yes,
familiar.
Yeah.
familiar, yeah, not really
Yes.
familiar with the code.
That's really interesting. I'm also looking at the chat window here. It's not compulsory in Australia either, at all. Like there is nothing in our curriculum that says you must teach coding. But we got sneaky and we put it into subjects that already existed. So it's big in mathematics, it's big in science, it's a little bit in art and design as well, which is somewhere I never thought I'd see it. So we got a little bit sneaky. So this we use the Mindstorms robot in science, and we get them to have a dance competition, things like that, like you. And because then we put them in with the existing curriculum, we have a little bit more sort of scope to fund it as well. I have to agree. Someone said down there here, Teachers Own Initiative. It's fabulous that you're doing that. And it's interesting seeing so many of you saying, yeah, we've got coding or using Swift and Python. It's fabulous. And the good thing is at least things like Swift, once you have the device, the actual coding itself is free to do. Something that got really popular in Australia a little while ago was coding clubs. Again, because we didn't have it in our curriculum, but we really loved coding and we saw the value in it. So coding clubs were sort of run at lunchtimes at schools, things like that, or after school clubs, or in the libraries. Because libraries in Australia, you can bring your phone to. You can't bring your phone to school, but in Victoria, but you can bring it to the libraries, no problem. So groups of students could learn to code sort of in their own time. And that sort of took off. And then when schools saw how popular that actually was, they sort of brought them more into school and gave us a bit more scope to do that. Yeah, a little bit about Scratch. Fabulous. Scratch is another free, wonderful resource. There's lots out there. By the way, crew, in about 1 more minute, we'll jump back into the presentation aspect. I wish I could give you longer. D&T, I'm thinking, is design and technology, if I'm correct. So you 4 started Scratch. Fabulous.
Yes.
Fabulous.
Yes.
So something like this Pixel Play could sit sort of as a bit of a fun, get into gaming, understand Pixel. It sort of straddles digital tech, but also arts. And that's sort of, again, coming back to that, trying to get some of these digital techs in a bit sneakily. We put it in through art, which is why we studied pixels and gaming as well. So fabulous. All right, I'm going to jump back in, share my screen. Hopefully I haven't lost you to hopscotch for the rest of the session, but let's jump on in. All right, guys, so welcome back. Hopefully you were able to get in and start having a bit of a play around. It's complex, but those tutorial videos are fabulous for stepping through the learners. I'll take you through a little bit later in this session what we actually do with this information. But basically what you've done is what our students would just do themselves. So that would have been their first experience with the game. Hopefully they would have a lot longer. They would have come up with something, you know, that they could play. Okay. But you'll see up on screen at the moment, I have a question, and this is something we learned a lot about when we're in remote learning, is when we bring our students back, how do we actually sort of get them to share some of those skills that we've also tried to develop, not just the game itself, but some of those personal skills. So feel free to answer this prompt in the chat window. How did you solve a challenge you had? Because this is exactly what we do with our young learners. We'd ask them, all right, what was hard? What we started noticing that was also beautiful is they'd start answering each other. And, I don't know if you've done much teaching through Zoom. It's a challenge in itself. But what would happen is you'd be so busy presenting that you wouldn't be keeping an eye on the chat. And what would happen is our students started helping each other. Like, oh, I had a real challenge with this, or I couldn't get my code to do this. And then someone that could help them could actually use that sort of remote chat window to do that. Okay. Guys, you guys have a lot of Scratch. That's fabulous. All right. So jumping, sorry, I just lost connection there for one moment. Jumping back in. Let's have a look at what we do now. So normally we'd give our students 2 hours to do that task. Okay? At the end of the 2 hours, they'd come back, they'd reflect, they'd share those games. And touching on what I mentioned at the start, we'd also have a workflow for getting those games to us. For us, it's using Google Classrooms and posting assignments, and they just put their answers or their links in there, and then we get them all that way. Okay. But what we do next, I guess, links us a little bit more to English. Okay. So we now know the tools. So in theory, if you were one of our students, you'd be like, yes, I have a really basic understanding of hopscotch and I know some of the things I can do. They also very quickly work out what they can't do. And we need them to have that information in order to be able to do the next bit, which is all about stories and characters. Okay, so I popped this in the chat while you guys were off looking at hopscotch, and I've popped it in there as a keynote and also as a JPEG. But basically we would start with a plan. So this is where we start to bring that rigor in and connect it to some of those other subjects. Okay, so they need to have a game name, that needs to have a goal. We do give our students word limits for two reasons. One is so they can aim for it, and two, so that they don't write a 4,000 word thesis on their game. We don't need that at this point. So we do tend to give them a ballpark of where they could go. Story points, backstory. Now, if you're wondering why we use these particular words like story points or backstory, we worked with our English teachers and said, hey, if we're writing a story, i.e. a game, what language will our students be familiar with? So the language here, they're already familiar with. Okay. We asked them to pick 3 game components from hopscotch. Okay, and what we mean by that, if you saw the little YouTube clip that I popped in the chat before, it just means what things are you going to include, like control panels, joysticks, timers. Again, these all used to be free and they just became paid. However, sneaky heads up, you can learn all of these in Crossy Roads and Geometry Dash. So if they did those 2, they get all these little sessions. Okay, we worked that out. Then we asked them to justify a rating on their game. These are, you know, high school or secondary school students. So the chances that they're going to have something that may be a little bit not okay is higher. So we make them link it to the parental guidance rating that's Australian. Okay, so in other words, all games in Australia have different ratings to suit the ages and the content. They have to make sure theirs fits in the parental guidance category. Okay. When you say that to someone else, it sounds like it's not safe. Parental guidance is actually one of the lowest ones you can have in terms of rating, i.e. the safest. Okay, and then we get them to do some sketching. Okay, for us, we can use an app like Procreate. You could do it on paper, but we get them to start thinking about that main character and characterization. And this is where our second practical task comes in. Okay. I'm going to talk to you about how Tinkercad fits in with all of, I guess, this understanding this unit and this design work. Okay? So Tinkercad is a free app, and this one is actually free. Okay, so it's fabulous. If you don't have an iPad though, it does also have a web-based version, which is tinkercad.com, and that's on screen right now. Okay, Tinkercad is a really interesting program. It allows you to have an account that as a teacher, you can even set up accounts for your students. Now, depending on the age of your students, I know there's a lot of primary teachers here. That can be an issue with some of these. Like we found we would be in some programs and you had to be over 13, which is a real pain because about half the class is over 13, half's not. Tinkercad, if you set up a teacher account and you have to apply, you don't need to prove anything except that you have an education email in Australia. Sorry, not in Australia, wherever you are in the world. But once you have that educator email and you apply and you say, yes, this is my school, you can set up entire classes. You can see all your students' work. It is well worth doing. It just takes out that headache of logging every student in, then forgetting their passwords and so forth. So definitely worth looking at that teacher option. I'm not going to dwell too much on that though, because I'd like to actually show you the program itself. Okay. I'll be using the app version today. You're more than welcome to use the app or the website version. So give me one moment. There's a quick screen change that I need to make just to my iPad. Here we go. All right, so hopefully now you can see my iPad. If you've never seen Tinkercad before, up on the top left-hand side there, that is what the app looks like. Okay. All right, and this is what happens once you get in there. Okay, so as I said, well worth it when you've got a moment to look at the teach, and even under Learn, there are so many good lesson plans there that connect sort of building something in 3D and so forth to what you're doing in your regular classrooms. Okay, so our unit's pixel play. We've looked at pixel games. We've actually had a try at coding and building in some pixel realities using Hopscotch. Now we need to build our main character. And we thought that's exciting, but we could make it more fun. And that's why we decided to now introduce our learners to 3D printing at this point. If you don't have a 3D printer, this is still well worthwhile doing, because understanding how something is perceived in space around it, okay, particularly in primary years maths, is a concept that can be incredibly hard to teach, and this actually makes it come to life. Okay, so what we do is we go to create new design. Hopefully the lag's not too bad. After 16 weeks of remote learning, I've learned to wait for the lag on the iPad when doing this. All right, so when you get in there, you have something that looks like this, okay? Top left-hand corner, there's like something that looks like a dice that says top and front. If you click on that, see how I'm moving around, it just changes my view, okay? Which is good, okay? On the right-hand side, you have basic shapes, and because we're working in pixels, we really only need that box. Suddenly, why we're only working in pixels becomes very clear. We've actually simplified it for our learners for their first time in 3D design. Okay. So again, if you missed the very start, I spoke a little bit about how at our school we have, within the one class, a huge range of learners. So we have 4 entry points. So I'll show you the very, very starting entry point. And on screen now, you can see something that says Scribble. So Scribble, and this only works on the iPad with your pencil. Otherwise, you can use your finger. Otherwise, on the web version, it's a little bit clunky with the mouse. So this is a good choice, but it is better on the iPad. Okay. So I click Scribble and I click on my work plane, and it makes it so that I'm looking bird's eye, straight down. Okay. Pixels, squares. So I'm using my square grid. Scribble basically allows me to freehand draw. So this is going to be my character. My character is a staircase. It's not really, it's just what I drew. Okay. I'm going to add some eyes. Okay. This is about all we'd model for our learners, and then we'd ask them, why do you think I've got no gaps and everything's joined? And there's always one student that goes, oh, because if you print it with bits that are floating, they'll just float off. And you're like, exactly. So Scribble is a freehand drawing tool that then, as you can see on my screen now, converts your drawings into 3D printable files. Okay. However, that's okay. We've probably got some students though, and you will too, that probably a little bit stronger than just that. Okay, so I'm going to take my Scribble out. All right, in that case, we'll use the box, so the red box there. Okay, I click on my screen. I'm going to do it without my pencil just to show you it's actually really, it's possible without the pencil. Okay, and how this part works is this is harder. Okay, you see those little white boxes on my big red box there? They allow me to edit the size, the height. Okay, again, if I click off it, I can move around my shape, click on it, click those white things, I can start to edit my shape. Okay, so they can actually build, bring another box in, a character or a pixel character piece by piece. Okay, by overlapping shapes, they join. Okay, so again, click off, check my alignment. Okay, there we go, I'm going okay. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to move that. Back button's up the top. There we go. Okay, click on here. Click on that again. I might bring that around out the other side. Okay. Now, if I click on where it says shape, click the red, I can change the color of things and so forth. Okay. And the last thing I'm going to show you, okay, because the best way to learn this is to push every button, is just the difference between a red box and a grey box. What a grey box does, I'll just make it smaller, is it cuts things out. Okay, yep. Okay, I'm not quite in the right position there. I need to move that back ever so slightly. Oh, still not, but you're getting the idea. Now, that is possibly the quickest introduction I've given to Tinkercad yet. For our year 7 and 8 students, that's probably all we could go through before they're absolutely itching to get in there, push every button, and then teach me something. Okay. On this screen alone, you can turn this into augmented reality. There is so much you can do with it. You can even turn it into Minecraft view if you want. But the task we'd set our students is this. And I'll bring this up on screen for you. Let's see if I get it right this time. No, okay. Apologies, guys. All right, so this is what I'm going to give you. Not too long to do, but I want you to jump into Tinkercad if you haven't already. And instead of having behaviors we're looking for, on the right-hand side of this task, we've got some constraints, okay? So it must be pixel style. Keeping it in one single shape makes it much more accessible for the students, okay? The parts must be joined. We spoke about why in 3D printing. Single color will be printing, but it doesn't matter if I put every single color in the world in it, okay? So basically, I know it's not long. Again, I do apologize. We're on time, but we didn't have too long to play with these. I'd love you to go have a bit of an explore of Tinkercad. Again, I will stay here. I'll be here for any questions, whether they're related to Tinkercad, Hopscotch, or anything else. But I will see you back here at 11:15 if you're just going to step out and have a play.
Sorry, Shelly, one question. Is the design can be printed out using the 3D printer? You actually mute your...
Sorry, I forgot about that. So absolutely, Tinkercad, when it's time to export, sorry, it's just loading on my iPad for a second. You export what's known as a .stl file, and that is printable through any 3D printer. It doesn't matter what brand, they're all able to print that file. So we've run this with schools that don't have 3D printers, but we still do the 3D design because how it helps them understand. We also, again, tying it back to the maths, we got our students to do it so they can understand X, Y, and Z axes, I beg your pardon. Sorry, yeah, it really does not matter whether you've got the 3D printer or not, but they are super fun to print 3D, especially if they're little and the students can actually walk out of the class and go, hey, I made a pixel character. This is my game character that I will eventually go back to Hopscotch and create from scratch. It's really cool.
Yeah.
What I'll do is I'll just share my screen from the iPad and I'll show you how to actually share it. So give me one moment again. I'll just bring up my iPad. All right, so when you're ready to print these, this is the one I just made. By the way, they give automatic names, you can change them. All right, so I click on it, and if you click download, the file you want is the .stl, okay? And they will work on a 3D printer. Okay? We actually use 3D printers at our school that only use potato and corn recycled as the filament. And that's part of what we're trying to do to be a sustainable school. And we make that ourselves. So we make the filament and then we put it into the 3D printers. Okay? Again, having that workflow, so how are you going to get that particular file, okay, to the printer is another thing for us. We literally just pop it into, you can see on my screen there, Classroom, and then I can collect those. I pop them on an SD card and just put the SD card into the side. You can also view it in 3D, I think. There we go. So if you can't print, they can always open it and then they can move around. So when they're building their character, okay, they can see from all angles. So it's pretty cool. If any of you are art teachers, fabulous activity is drawing it from the multiple views, because we teach technical drawing, so things like isometric or orthogonal drawing, which is 3 views or however many views, and students can actually manipulate it, which is great. Great for understanding space and shape and how it all fits together.
Hi, Shelly. Can I ask one question?
Of course.
Yeah, if I choose Tinkercad for text or numbers, how can I change the spelling?
Sorry, you cut out there. What was the last bit?
Sorry, if I use a Tinkercad for text, I choose a text for 3D. So can I edit the spelling?
Yes, you absolutely can. I'm just opening it up. Hang on.
Yeah, for example, if you don't mind, can I share my screen?
Yeah.
So you can see, yeah. All right, for example, I choose for text. So how can I edit for this text spelling?
All right. So click on the word text, please.
Sorry?
Oh, do you want me to bring my screen up or? Yeah, I'll bring mine up.
Yeah.
Sure. I just need you to jump out. Fabulous. Thank you. Okay. Give me a moment. Strangely, not everyone wants to print the word text. All right. So once you've put text in there, if you click on it, okay, see how you get, yours will look like this. See how you get up the top where it says shape and there's a red circle? There's a little tiny arrow next to it. And see where it says text? That's how you can change those. Okay. So you click on it, click on the little arrow next to the word shape, and where it says text, you can click and change. Hopefully that helps.
There is actually one question about the printer, 3D printer brand. Can actually you suggest what kind of 3D printer can they buy for their classes?
Fabulous. Depends. Look, I'd probably be better off suggesting, because I'm not sure about the brands in terms of Malaysia, I'm better off probably suggesting features, I guess. It's one way of looking at it. So any 3D printer that is enclosed in a box rather than open is immediately a bit safer. Not that they're particularly dangerous at all, but they're safer and they're warmer. So there's less things likely to go wrong with your print. So we ran what's known as FlashForge printers. They are very, very good. And the reason we chose to run them is they're enclosed. They don't heat to a point that's unsafe. Like some of them get so hot that we can't have students around them. But the FlashForge Inventor and Inventor 2 were absolutely fabulous. Maker bots are very good, but they're very expensive. I'm not sure you get a lot more just for going with that brand. Okay. What else? I'm trying to think of what else is good to know. Anything that has a heated base is also a lot better, and you've got less likelihood of things failing when they print. You can actually have ones which are like handheld, carried. You can get ones which you can assemble yourself, as in print them yourself using the 3D printer itself. But we found for students and for learners and for being in school environments, the pre-made ones and the ones which were closed in were much, much better. Okay. Shazam's just discovered the AR viewer. Yes, how fun is that? You can put the design in Tinkercad into the view that you're looking at. Okay. In terms of the filament, do you mean the filament that we use? Sorry, is it Jaya? Yeah. You asked me to give you some more information regarding the filament. Basically, PLA, two main types. There's ABS and PLA. PLA actually is recycled potato and corn. We just happen to have a very big focus on sustainability at school. So what we do is we recycle stuff from our canteen and our cafe. Okay. We also use recycled failed 3D printing things because there's a bit of waste that goes into that. So we keep all that and then we basically chip it down. Okay, so we have two little bits of machinery. It's called, if you look at precious plastics, we have a chipper and then we put it through what's known as an extruder and then we just wind it back on. Okay, so that setup was, we got a grant to do that from our government though, because of the environmental impact of actually being able to recycle our plastics and things and food wastes. I have to keep reminding the students not to eat it though, because they know what it's made from and they just keep thinking it's safe to eat. It's gross to eat. Don't eat it. Okay, so yeah, precious plastics. That's what I was about to time. If you are using filaments in a classroom and you have a choice between ABS or PLA, PLA always, and it's to do with the fumes. PLA is much safer for young people and it doesn't smell, whereas ABS does a bit, and ABS also has to be a lot hotter. It is stronger, but for what we're building, we don't need strength. Okay? So PLA is generally what we'd use in a school. All right. So I better jump into this last bit because I'm aware we finish in about 14 minutes. So welcome back. Hopefully you had some time to jump into Tinkercad. I did want to spend a moment though just explaining where all of this goes, because what you're seeing is just sort of little snippets of something much, much bigger. Okay, so after we've done this, we've printed our little characters, we've got a story, we've got a direction, we know what elements we can use to build our game. Then we give our students over that 2 weeks, which is only 4 hours, by the way. They only have 4 hours. That's 2 weeks of classes for us in this. We get them to build their own games based on their plans. Now, they have to change them inevitably a little bit, but we do encourage them to stay really close to that plan as much as they can. You'll see on the screen, that's another page from our portal. And we focus our students with that question at the start of every lesson we have with them during this phase. Okay, so what do I plan to do today? And they have to tell 3 things, and we work with them to work out what that actually looks like, or else you get do my game, make my game, do my game, and be like, that's 3 things, but they're not helpful things. So we do a lot of work on actually how you set goals. And the second one we sometimes add, depending on our students, is what can I do to get help? Because part of the thing about this is there's one of me and there's 28 of them. I can't manually go to each student, especially not that we're in lockdown, but they have to know where they can get help and what they can do. So we do also teach those skills as part of these units. Okay. Then once we've got our games, we build a soundtrack. Okay, so we get our 80s style music on. Now this is where you can see we're bringing in the other R's to this unit. Okay, so we use a program called Garageband. You may be familiar with it on the iPad or the MacBook. And the free Everyone Can Create book is phenomenal. In fact, sorry, you're gonna see my screen. I'm gonna pop that link in for you right now. These are free, they're written by Apple, and again, it helped us when we were remote to be able to communicate skills with our learners without necessarily being able to show them, model, and so forth. Okay. So there we go. So we make a soundtrack. We usually have really fun synthesized 80s soundtrack to go with our game. Okay, so it just adds another element. And then the last thing we do is we put the music with the game, because you can bring your own music into Hopscotch, and we play them. And what you see on screen now is how we sort of manage that. I mark them, they mark themselves, and then their peers mark them as well. So we watch a little bit of, I guess, YouTube, understanding how to give constructive feedback, and then we fill in that table. So we evaluate, okay, circles. Now, that table was actually written by our learners, so they knew from the very start what they were going to be marked on. That's different in every single class. So this is just one of my classes. They're often similar, and I won't lie, we do sort of drive them in the direction. We think that have you considered that we need to have some gameplay or some engagement? But they do actually write that, and then they own it. And they own it because it's not just me marking them and going, here's your A, or B, or C, or D, or E. Okay? That said, we combine those marks. The self and the peer marks count, but when it comes to reporting, we actually do go generally with what the teachers suggested, but takes on board that feedback as well. Okay. So that's where we go with all of this unit. What I'd love to do now is, I guess, give you some time. I'm aware we finish in about 10 minutes, but I thought maybe if there's any questions about anything related to this or relating to what we're doing with our makerspace, now would be the time to ask them. So I'll jump back into the chat, okay, and come at me. I'll read your question out too if it pops up. It's just like being in a real class. You know when you say, are there any questions, and it's all on Zoom and everyone's silent. There was one I didn't answer before. Oh no, the augmented reality. Sorry, I did that one. I'm just going back. There was a question about when we started learning coding in Australia. Okay, it's a little bit tricky to answer that because students go to their first school from when they're 6 years old to when they're about 11 or 12. And then when they get 12, they go to their second school, which is secondary school. Now, because it's not mandated in their curriculum, some students do a lot from about grade 3. Okay? So 8, 9 years old, I beg your pardon, they start it then and they do it right through, whereas we pick up 12-year-olds who have never ever coded, don't know what coding is before. So it's actually really interesting. At our school, we start the moment we get them. So the first year at our school, they start coding, and then we continue to build those skills until the point where if they went back and they looked at Hopscotch, they'd be so bored because their skills really quickly grow out of that. Okay. All right. Well, if there's no other questions, I'm thinking there may not be, I will stay in this meet right up until 2:30 with you, but if there's no other questions, I'd like to say thank you very much for having me. Hopefully you've been able to see some tools, consider, I guess, some different ways of using them, to be able to read some of the comments from your peers. I've really enjoyed myself reading those and seeing what you guys are talking about. And hopefully it's been worth your time this morning, you coming along and having a learn. So I'll stay here, but other than that, thank you very much.